Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, and we battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time, according to two film geeks from Wiltshire, England. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe. Hello, podsters. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. This week, as Candyman hits the big screens across the world, we will be focusing on supernatural horror films. So it's a big open subject to choose from, and as ever, I am joined by the Satan worshipper himself, Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Hi, hail Satan.
Hail Satan. Anyway. Right, what is your pick for supernatural horror films, Mr. Encyclopedia Man?
Oh yeah, my pick is Stephen King. That's the one. Stephen
Yes.
King's 1408.
So why did you pick this one?
No idea. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't explain
Oh, really?
it. You just said supernatural horror film, and for some reason I thought of this. I've got no idea why. I haven't even watched it.
It's a completely random pick.
Completely random. I think The Room made me choose it. Something supernatural about this pick.
When you stayed in a hotel recently, was it 1408, the number?
Jesus, do you know? I never even clocked that on. But yeah, I did. I did stay in a hotel recently, so yeah, maybe that was it. And you know, I was visited by ghosts and Samuel Jackson, obviously.
Yeah.
And he said, "Review this motherfucking movie."
So what happens in 1408?
So the film is about John Cusack is a writer who reviews hotels and then writes about them in, like, you know, these guides. But these aren't just regular hotel reviews. These are like paranormal hotel reviews. So he only visits haunted houses and haunted hotels. He's quite cynical. So even though he writes about seeing ghosts and spirits, he doesn't believe in them at all. And usually most of the hotels are like they're kind of tourist traps, so they're just pulling everybody's leg. Do you know what I mean? But he goes there, he writes it, you know, and carries on. And he gets a postcard from someone. It's never actually revealed, who just says this one hotel, don't stay at room 1408. So he's like, all right, this has piqued my interest. So he does loads of research. And people have committed suicide in there, like, constantly. There are so many suicides in there. And they don't actually allow people to book the room. So he manages to sort of, like, strong-arm his way, even when the concierge, played by Samuel Jackson, is really trying to convince him, please, for the love of God, do not book that room.
Yeah.
And he thinks, it's one of those things, like, when you tell somebody that they can't do something, that they want to do it even more. And he's like, why don't you want me to go in this? This must be some, you know, good stuff. They should have just bolted the door and just said 1408. Yeah. What the hell are you talking about? That room doesn't exist.
Well, just thrown away the key, you know.
Just throw away the key, yeah. Yeah, maybe they wanted to kill him, I don't know. Yeah, so he rents the, you know, room, and weird shit starts happening. Starts seeing ghosts, hallucinations, visions, lots of random crap, with the room trying desperately to make him lose his mind so he can kill himself.
So what did you make of this film, then?
So, it was okay.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was very good, really. It throws, like, a lot of things at the screen, and there's not much suspense building at all. It's all just like, like, and yawn. So, I mean, a lot of the things that it tries, it doesn't really work for me.
I think, personally, I should have found it scarier than it was. I think, conceptually, there's not a problem with it. I think maybe I picked this from a review I saw and little bits and pieces that I'd seen from trailers and stuff, and it looked good. And I don't think it's necessarily the scares or the direction. Well, it's going to be the direction, but one thing that I think puts it back, and I would go definitely with the acting. I don't want to get into it too much, but John Cusack, I don't know, he just looked bored.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Like, through all of this, like, weird shit happening, he just looks bored. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter what they show on the screen. I can't buy it, because John Cusack just looks like he's just bored out of his mind. So I would say, you know, that's kind of like the nail in the coffin for this film. It's like the main star, I think, really let it down, and especially because he's like 90% of the movie.
I was craving more Samuel L. Jackson in this film so much. I was like, please bring on.
Samuel Jackson should have been in a room. Could you imagine his reactions, like seeing a mini Samuel Jackson in the fridge or seeing a man hang? You're like, wow, motherfucker! You know, he would have at least looked like, you know, he was alive, unlike John Cusack, where nothing seems to faze him at all.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll go into this. But yeah, I think that was, in my opinion, that's why the scares, for me, I don't think carried. You know, in retrospect, I was thinking, why didn't any of this stuff creep me out? And I think it's just because John Cusack, it just kind of looks limp.
Phoning it in.
He's phoning it in. This is a paycheck, you know. I think he was really behind on the rent, so he's like,
yeah, I'll do that.
You know,
Sounds terrible, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
So directing then, like, there are some good bits in this film. It's not all terrible. I like how the film draws out the moment until Mike enters room 1408. You know, ever since the haunted room was mentioned in the film, you have these very long conversations with Gerald, played by Samuel L. Jackson, about the terrible things that have happened to people in the room. You know, to the long, drawn-out walk Mike has to the room where he's looking at the files of scary dead people from the room, you know, to looking at the room numbers getting closer and closer to 1408. And you have, like, this, like, cool internal look at the door lock as he opens the door. But then, you know, the suspense is undercut where he turns on the lights in the room and nothing happens, you know. And I think the fact that it was so drawn out, you know, that was the only conclusion, really, that you're always going to undercut it with the rhythm of the film.
Yeah.
To open it up with.
I think, what was it? One bunch of shots that I quite liked was where he's going around the room with a black light and you see, like, flashes of, you know, the people that had died, like, in the room. I thought that was pretty cool. As a sequence of shots, I thought it was pretty, it was just pretty awesome.
Yeah, I quite like that as well. It was quite creative. I mean, this film isn't very scary to me. I mean, the sequence where the radio randomly turns on and Mike somehow jumps out of his skin only made me yawn, and like the bit when there's randomly no sound at all and you just has this like ringing in his ear is quite cool. But when he hurts his hand on the window and then suddenly gets attacked by hot water in the sink. My own just got a bit bigger there. For someone that claims to not be scared of anything, but gets freaked out by hot water, I mean, come on, dude. Like, it's hot water.
And chocolates on his pillow.
Yeah. He gets very freaked out by that. For someone claiming to not be scared of anything.
Yeah, he's more freaked out by the hot water than he is, you know, when he sees himself in the other building.
Yeah.
I like that sequence. I thought that was a really good sequence. But yeah, you know, you're like, dude, that is objectively more terrifying. You know, you see yourself on the other side.
I mean, there's so many, like, random things that happen in this film with, like, very little to no suspense building. You have, like, past characters, like, projected like they're from a TV and just throw themselves out the window. And, like, Mike randomly sees his dad in a wheelchair in a cold bathroom, which was kind of more funny than scary to me. You know, there's, like, voices, all sorts. You know, I'm not a fan of these types of, like, horror haunted house films that gives you license to basically do what you want to scare you when there's, like, no rules or bounds, of which often makes for, like, lazy scares and storytelling. You know, it's just, I think when you just give yourself license to create a dramatic device to just give you license to do anything you want, it's a bit lazy to me. And I think they should have focused on a few scenes of just all-out scares, really focus on the suspense building a bit more, rather than just chucking loads of stuff at the screen. It just didn't really work. I mean, the random dustman in the air vents was mildly scary. You know, the way Mike kicks his jaw was cool, I guess. But again, it felt a bit rushed, and I really felt they could have built that up some more, because that was quite a good concept of claustrophobia, and they, you know, it's just ended too quickly.
I actually think you do have a point, you know, where you're saying, like, quite a lot of stuff and not giving it chance to build. Because I think even when you see some of these, you know, shocks, like, you know, say he sees his family or just any kind of weird thing, or, you know, people committing suicide and other stuff, instead of just doing that and going to the next one, like really build on it. You know, you can build the suspense to it, but even when it happens, just keep going. Just like make it weirder. Like he's caught in an event with some zombie guy, kicks his jaw. Just keep it going.
Yeah.
Just keep it going. Like maybe he starts spewing black shit out of his neck. Then just keep it going. You're like, just make it weirder and weirder and weirder. Do you know what I mean? Just make one scare as weird as hell and just keep it going. You know?
Yeah,
maybe that would have been more effective.
Or just, build up to that moment for longer, have more of a chase in the vents or whatever. Just make more of a moment of that scene. I liked how the pictures in the room came alive, and there's a picture of a ship in a storm. And, the storm is in the room with him. And when Mike attempts to smash the picture, water just gushes all over him. That did make me laugh, to be fair. I mean, I liked it, but I don't think it was supposed to be funny. But it was funny to me, where he just gets soaked. I think my favourite sequence is where Mike is looking out the window, shouting for help. And he sees a guy across the street in the window, but ends up being a reflection of himself. But it's him in dark clothes, and then a random bold guy with a hammer attacks him and then disappears quick. That was mildly scary. I like that bit. I kind of wanted more of this dark side of Mike Ensling's character in the room with him, because I think that was the most effective parts of the film, when you see this kind of dark figure of a reflection of himself. That there's a moment, on the laptop, which I'll get into in screenplay, which is quite good as well. Those are really effective moments for me.
Basically, he's trying to talk to his ex-wife, but the feed from him to her is made up by the room. So it's like, oh, please come to the hotel. It's like, no. Yeah, that was cool.
I kind of wanted more of that stuff, really. Have you got a favourite shot or sequence?
I think kind of my favourite sequence would be, with the other version of him across the street. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's mine as well.
Oh, yeah, actually, I was going to mention this one. My funniest sequence, we were talking about scares that didn't work, or funny sequences. My funniest one was actually the miniature Samuel Jackson. That was funny.
Oh, yeah, that was hilarious.
Where he goes into the fridge looking for booze, and he finds a tiny Samuel Jackson. He's like, dude, I did warn you. And then he goes absolutely crazy on the fridge. He's like,
I know. Yeah, I've got that in acting. As I said, I was crying out for more Samuel Jackson in this film. But as you said, there's a moment where Mike is talking to Samuel Jackson in a fridge. And I was like, please, not like this. I don't want Samuel L. Jackson to return in a fridge. What's going on? And then the fridge turns back to normal, to a normal fridge, and Mike is screaming at the fridge, and it's just so funny.
Yeah.
John Cusack screaming at the cans of beer, screaming, "What do you want from me? What do you want from me?" And I was just a glass? I don't know, a beer mat, probably.
Some ice. Yeah.
And then he just goes nuts on it.
Maybe he just wants some snakes. Yeah. Snakes on a motherfucking plane. Or in a hotel.
Or there's just no glasses in the room. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, that would be great if he asked for ice and the little Samuel Jackson turned into Frozone. I think I've saved this movie.
God, that would be a turn.
Yeah.
Could have saved it, yeah.
Yeah. Woman, where's my ice suit?
Right, directing the score for me, I mean, it's not brilliant.
Can I repick, actually? Can we do this again? Come on, seriously. We'll do this, but let's do another supernatural horror thing. I reckon I can do better.
Okay, yeah.
I just picked this randomly. I never watched it. I don't know why I picked this. If I picked again, I'd pick The Ritual, okay? So, let's keep that in the back of your mind. The Ritual.
Okay.
All right.
So, I would go 6.5, I think. How about you, sir?
This is going to break my heart because I picked this. Now I seem like a wanker, I'm not a true film buff at all. Maybe I'll go Jesus Christ. My heart is telling me 5.9. So
okay.
I think that's where I'll go.
Right, screenplay then.
So, you can't tell me I'm not honest. This is my own film, and I'm shitting on it hard.
My favourite parts of this film were the beginning parts, where you get a lot of seeds sown about his past and things. I quite like that stuff. a few characters mention Mike Enslin's first book, A Long Road Home, where a girl at a book signing asks, was the father and son real, when Mike says no. And then later Gerald in the hotel says to Mike that he liked the first book, The Long Way Home, and says, I rather thought the father was a bastard. And you're like, yep, it's definitely Mike, but it's not, one of his famous books. So the film definitely sows some interesting seeds about what that book was and about how that will be significant later in the film, but it doesn't really get addressed in a satisfying way to me in the end. And there's other little moments of intrigue that they just leave hanging in the beginning, when Mike is on the phone to his publisher and says, are you sure you want to come back to New York after what happened? And then later he says, are you going to see Lily, his ex-wife? And then when Gerald and Mike are in the elevator, Gerald randomly mentions that there's no floor 13. Was that actually the floor they went to? I don't know. That kind of confused me.
Yeah, no, so there is no floor 13. So there's a floor 14. I think they say they're superstitious, so they don't have a floor 13.
Oh, right, okay.
I think the 100 numbers are the floor. Yeah, if that makes sense. It's 14. Yeah, so the 14th floor. Room 8 of the 14th floor. They don't have a floor 13 because they're superstitious, yeah. So that's why it's 1408. So technically, it is the 13th floor. So 13 is an unlucky number.
Okay.
The room is on the 13th floor. Yeah. And the numbers add up to 13. 148.
Double
unlucky.
Did not see that. Yeah, so there's a few seeds sown outside of the 1408 tales that could have become important, but unfortunately it doesn't really come to much, and it's just a shame that those seeds aren't particularly very satisfying at the end.
I do like, it doesn't really kind of tell you much, so you have to you're like, what is his problem? But I do like that even later, where it's it's about his daughter and that's why he's so fucked up. And story-wise, I do like the fact that, where his daughter turns to ash in his hands and shit.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty cool. But yeah, it felt like he's basically trying to deal with his daughter dying.
I did like the little bit when it's really cold and Mike is talking to Lily on the laptop and she says the cops are coming in the room, but it's empty. But the cool part was that there's a window pops up in the laptop and another Mike is talking to her and tells her to come to the room. And then that character winks at Mike, the other Mike winks at him, and I thought that was quite clever. I like the water sequence where the room seems to be drowning him, but then he ends up waking up in the beach in LA after a surfing accident, and you see the number 1408 on a plane message go by, and you assume it was a traumatic experience, this whole thing, in his head. And it feels like a cheap twist a little bit, but then he sees people from the hotel in a post office, and then you get this great sequence where these people are breaking down the post office to reveal that he's still in 1408. He's back in the room. I enjoyed that fake out there, but I think I did feel like there was another twist coming there before it happened, because the beach thing felt a bit too convenient, or it was just another traumatic experience with the post office blowing up. I don't know.
But I would say, a lot of the scares, I think you're kind of right. They just fall flat, and it's very hard to... I don't think it's that hard to pin what it's on. I don't think it's the writing. I don't think it's what happens, per se. There's a lot of things that happen where I go, in theory, that could be creepy, or that could be quite scary, but it's just not pulled off. I think you do have to blame the directing. I think we discussed this even in directing just a minute ago, where you're maybe it just doesn't build it up enough, the scares, and maybe it doesn't hold on it long enough. And then also, when we get to acting, I just don't buy John Cusack. He freaks out over the littlest thing, and then he's just completely emotionless at the completely insane thing. I mean, so I think the director kind of just screwed up a bit when he did this. So I've not got too much of a problem with the writing.
I do feel you do have to put some blame to the writing, I think, because I do feel like there's not much story to this film. And, you get these seeds of a backstory from Mike Enslin, but which I liked, but when Mike enters 1408, I feel like the film is just throwing you with random shit and trying to scare you and falling flat miserably. And the story with, losing his daughter is not particularly interesting because there's just not enough of it to be invested emotionally in it. The scares should have been more about like himself, his wife, and his daughter, not all this random stuff. And even when he sees his dad, like there's been no mention of his dad previously in the film. Like surely that could have been like Lily or his daughter, another scene with his daughter to get more of a connection with those characters rather than his dad. I like the concept of this story. It's Stephen King, for Christ's sake. It's, he does write some really great stuff, and I just feel like it should have been more focused on the family stuff, and I think it could have been a lot more effective if it kind of focused more on that. Have you got a favourite line then?
$8 for a bag of peanuts. This room truly is evil.
Oh, right.
That's my favourite line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just think that's the worst thing the room has done. $8
Yeah.
for peanuts.
I mean, there are some interesting ones. Sam Jackson says to him, "Oh, you drink, don't you?" "Of course I do. I just said I was a writer." That was good. But my favourite is near the end when he's on the phone to, like, I don't know, the spirit of the room, I guess. Room service. And Mike says, like, "Why don't you just kill me?" And then the room service woman says on the phone, "Because all our guests of this hotel enjoy free will, Mr. Enslin. You can choose to relive this hour over and over, or you can take advantage of our express checkout system." And then you see a noose in the room, which is quite funny.
In like every room.
Which is quite funny.
He's just going around as a noose. Just, you can kill yourself. Go on, man.
Please end our pain from watching this film.
Yeah. I need to mention this. There were two endings. We actually watched two different endings.
Yeah.
I did rewatch the other ending just to make sure. But so kind of he makes it out in the ending that you watched. That's the theatrical one.
Yeah, where he listens to the spirit of his daughter on his recording device, and his wife hears it. But what's the ending that you watched, the director's cut one?
Yeah, he dies. He bites the dust. Right. He goes up with that. He goes up with the room. That's it.
Yeah.
He's dead. Although he goes, he's a spirit and he can see his daughter and shit. So that was the director's ending.
What does Sam Jackson's character see him? Does he?
Yeah, he sees him in like the back of his car as like a spirit.
Oh, nice. That does sound like a better ending.
It sounds pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of like at least with the jump scare, it's a little scarier as an ending. You're like, oh fucking hell, and it's sadder. I wouldn't say like it elevates the film that much.
So score for me for screenplay. I think, the first 40 minutes, the dialogue between Sam Jackson's character, Gerald, and John Cusack's Mike Enslin is quite interesting. I quite like that. The first 40 minutes of this film is really quite good. And then it just stops being interesting and just, as I said many times already, it just throws crap at the screen to try and scare you, and they kind of forget about suspense. So it's a real shame, and they really should have incorporated more of the family stuff in throughout the film. So I'll probably go like 6.9.
Yeah, that's fair. That's actually what I was thinking as well.
6.9 as well?
Yeah. I was actually going to say 6.8, but I'm surprised at how close you got to what I was going to say. So, yeah, I'll go 6.9 as well.
So, acting then. For me, the standout performer is Samuel Jackson. I think he redeems this film a little bit. I like the moment from Sam Jackson when Mike gets out of the elevator and is about to go to room 1408, and Gerald stays in the elevator. And at the end of his lines, he says, "Please don't do this." And it's like he's being, really sincere and not begging, but like the one last attempt to stop him going in the room with some genuine fear in his voice. Before, he's been very like calm and controlled up until that moment, But there's one like truly terrible moment from John Cusack, the poor guy, when Mike opens up like the air vent and shouts, "I've got a knife!" and kind of holds it up in this pathetic, threatening way. I was just like, oh my God, really? I just found it really funny. I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It was just a really bad moment.
Exactly, yeah. That did seem like a first take sort of attempt. There are a lot of those where you're like, really? Sure you could do better than that, John.
I'm like, you're not going to be able to stab someone in that direction if someone's going to be in the vent. I mean, come on, dude. What's going on there?
Yeah.
Have you got any other acting moments that you have a problem with?
That I have a problem with.
Found funny?
Most of it's John Cusack and just some of the weird things that he does in this. But yeah, no, I like when he's kind of like trying to deduce like what's going on. Like there's a natural explanation. It's like, yep, some guy's left a mint on the pillow and then he's done this and then he's run over there and he's somehow... Actually, he kind of goes, you know, the idea that they're in the vents. He must be in the vent, you know. I just like how he's like overreacting to it. It's just quite amusing.
Yeah. Do you reckon he's trying too hard in this film? Or is it the material that he's working with just doesn't work for him?
I don't think it's the material. I think it's him. Yeah, I think probably he's just trying too hard. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know. A lot of his reactions and a lot of his stuff, it just doesn't come off as, like, natural. I just kept thinking, it's like, dude, are you, like, channeling Nicolas Cage? Like, it's like, I just cannot get how you're reacting to things.
Not doing a good job about it, either.
Yeah, he's doing a bad Nicolas Cage, which is funny. Yeah, no, I think it's John Cusack. I don't think this is his best performance, like, by far.
And the fridge scene we've already mentioned was just really funny.
It was really cringy. Little Samuel Jackson does a good job. His part of the fridge scene is you're like, damn, you're intimidating miniature Samuel Jackson. I can get behind you. But then John is just like, he's acting like a freaking lunatic and not in a good way. It's just like, nobody talks like this, man. And that kind of made me laugh. I don't think that scene is meant to make you like full on laugh, but it made me laugh.
No. My favourite performance is Sam Jackson for me.
Yeah, same.
Is that yours as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, score. Oh dear. To be fair, like all the other cast is quite good, other than poor John Cusack, I guess. Just for Sam Jackson, I'll give it a 7.1.
That's cool.
How about you, sir?
I'll give it a flat 7. Yeah, just for Sam. Otherwise, I think, this would be in the 6s.
Right, let's add up the scores then for 1408. 1408 gets 40.3, which is not good. Right, my film then is the classic that is Rosemary's Baby from 1968, one of the oldest films we've done. So why did I pick this film? Well, I kind of really wanted to pick a modern horror film, to be honest, because, there's so many really great ones done recently. Like, I was very tempted to pick It Follows or something like Hereditary.
You say Witch as well?
Oh yeah, The Witch. My God, that's terrifying, that film. From Robert Eggers. That's a really, really good film. But I kind of was like, I feel like I can't pick any of these because I feel like I'll be betraying the old classics because there's so many influences from the old ones that these new ones are inspired by, So I was tempted by like things like Carrie, and The Omen is a really good one. Richard Donner's The Omen. But eventually I went with Rosemary's Baby. I hadn't seen it for a long, long time. Certainly with these older films, they kind of only have these very specific few moments in the films that really like are quite shocking and scary. They all kind of like build up to these few moments, and certainly Rosemary's Baby is one of those. So yeah, that's why I picked it, really. So what happens in Rosemary's Baby? Well,
Rosemary has a baby.
Yeah, basically. Rosemary Woodhouse and Guy Woodhouse are a young couple in New York. They settle into these new apartments in the Blandford house, and they're hoping to have a baby. And they talk to their friend Hutch, and he kind of says that, this building has had lots of weird goings on. These twins who are witches, and they kind of ate a child or something, and then there's a story that someone found a baby in a basement wrapped in newspaper, but they kind of shrug off these stories just as stories, But then they meet these neighbors called the Castevets, an older couple, and they all seem very nice. And then, when they're trying, there's this very strange, hypnotic, dreamlike rape scene. and you're not really quite sure what the hell is going on. And then the Castevets are very nice. They say, don't bother with any of this modern medicine, modern doctors about bringing up your baby properly. We'll make you these nice herbal drinks. We know, like, the best doctor in New York, and Rosemary, loses weight, which is odd, and she's always got this pain in her womb. And then as the story goes on, she kind of finds out that the Castevets are related to these witches' stories. Hutch gives them a book about it, and she finds out that Roman Castevets is related to one of the witches in this book, and it all gets a bit freaky from there, and she ends up giving birth to the devil, basically. And, the Castevets are these witches and devil worshippers, Satan worshippers. And yeah, that's the film, really. And it's quite a slow burn. It's a hypnotic film, and very understated and real fears in this film. And it's not scary. It just has this underlying creepiness about this film, and I enjoyed it. And I'm fascinated to hear what you think about this film, because obviously I've picked a horror classic in the past, and you were like, nah, I wanted more gore from like Halloween.
Yeah.
John Carpenter's Halloween. So what did you make of this one, Boaz?
I think with John Carpenter's Halloween, I had very, very, very high expectations, which weren't met. But I mean, with this, yeah, I quite enjoyed it, actually. I'm not gonna, shit on too bad. But yeah, I will agree. It's not like, it is creepy. It has a creepy air about it all the way through. It is a creepy subject, and they're creepy people. But it's not horror in the sense that there are loads of jump scares. I wouldn't say it's a thriller in that way, or that, there's really horrific imagery. I don't think, for the best of my knowledge, I think the most horrible thing that actually happens to someone is that woman, but you only see the aftermath. She fell out of the window, and, that's not too bad. This film is kind of made better. It's not necessarily that it's a horror film. It's just really well done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a really well done film. Judged on that merit, it's quite enjoyable.
The director, Roman Polanski, he very much it feels like he has a lot of confidence just to make it very simple and make on purpose very understated, and just these very little glimpses of mystery in the film. And there's so much happens like off screen as well in this film, which I find fascinating. Directing. Yeah,
so my favorite scenes from I suppose a directorial point of view are like any of the dream sequences. They're so, I don't know, they're so odd, but like in a good way, and I just love how they're kind of done. Like when she starts having a dream, and basically the images are, you see people do stuff and what have you, her neighbors and people having conversations with her, and they're kind of like on the headboard. It's so weird. Like it goes up, and they're like, that was bizarre.
Yeah.
It was almost like, her dreams are it's kind of like a thought bubble, but in real life.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell? So that was bizarre. I've never seen anything like that. And I liked when it was going from real life to her dreams, like where she's on a boat, but she's being undressed and stuff. And then her husband is doing that, and that was weird. I mean, that whole devil rape scene was fairly strange.
Very hypnotic.
Yeah, very hypnotic. Very much like, felt like you were asleep or something. Yeah, you're not sure which things you're shown are real or not.
Yeah, that's what's great about it. And I think, as you said, you kind of have all these naked people around her, including Guy, her husband. And he seems to turn into this scaly devil raping her. And it's kind of like her mind is fighting against this nightmare, with scenes of her on this boat, these happy memories. One moment she has her swimsuit on, and then one moment she's naked, and then in the end it's like she completely succumbs to it, where she's asking for forgiveness from the Pope in her mind. And I think it's just like a question of what real things she's seeing being done to her, and what is Rosemary's mind is subverting from being real. It's just really hypnotic and clever, really. There's only 2 moments in this film that are kind of really freaky and really out there, this one and then the moments at the end. But there's some really interesting directing in the beginning. There's a really great subtle moment of directing when the Woodhouses visit the Castevets for dinner. And then afterwards, like, Rosemary, played by Mia Farrow, is helping dry up the dishes, and Mrs. Castevet's Minnie. And there's like a push-in on Rosemary's face, and then she looks through the door to the next room where Guy Woodhouse is with Mr. Castevets, like, smoking and talking. And you just see, like, the empty space, from the next room for a moment. And then when Rosemary goes round the corner, Guy looks very concerned with Mr. Castevets, but you have no idea what they've been talking about for him to look like that. And you're like, something's up here that Guy is not willing to talk to her about. It's very subtle stuff. And then in the next scene, when Guy wants to see Mr. Castevets again to listen to his stories, and says to Rosemary, like, she can stay at home if she wants. She doesn't have to come with him. It's all very sneaky in the beginning.
Oh yeah, this was a sequence I quite liked, where she's on the phone. Like, she 100% knows something is going on. Like, just everybody's acting so damn weird. Nothing's making sense. She doesn't trust anybody, doesn't trust Guy and stuff. But where she phones up and her doctor as well. So she phones up the other doctor, from the payphone. I quite like that scene, because she's like, trying to explain this conspiracy over the phone, and like, I need to meet with you, blah, 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 blah. It's all one shot, it's not cut or whatever, but this old chap just leans on the phone box. Yeah. And I like that, because it's like, he kind of looks like the profile and the white hair and what have you of
Dr. Saperstein.
Yeah. And I just quite like that. And it was like, and even she's freaked out. Like, the acting in it as well is pretty good. I think she turns around and she's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And it looks like a regular harmless old man. But it's just one of these things. But then you're thinking, is he also part of the conspiracy? I just like how that's all shot. How it's written and shot and acted. Even just that tiny scene, I thought it was really effective.
Yeah.
And how it's all just one take from... but you've got all this information, visual and auditory, and I thought it was pretty good.
It's very uncomfortable, isn't it? You're kind of a little bit embarrassed for her as well.
and it's claustrophobic as well.
Because, all this sounds ridiculous to Dr. Hill. And you're just like, oh, is he going to help her or not, And he kind of doesn't really. He just sends her off to Dr. Saperstein again in the end. Yeah. There's some interesting, like, gross out moments when Rosemary practically eats, like, raw steak. She literally cooks it on each side for a few seconds and eats that. That was kind of ew. And she eats, like, raw chicken livers, and, like, the camera moves to her reflection in the toaster, and she doesn't realize she's eating them, and then tries to bring them back up again. That was quite icky. Yeah, that was like, ew. And then... near the end, when Rosemary is at the point where she can't trust anyone, she escapes Guy and the creepy Dr. Saperstein and locks herself in the apartment. And when she's on the phone to her last hope, you see these two random people like walk across the corridor, and like, how the hell did they get in, Then when they all eventually get in, she fights back, but then loads of people are on her to sedate her. The camera's quite frantic, and it's quite jarring, because this is a young woman being attacked by pretty much really old people. And I just find old people are just scary, right? Normally they freak me out a little bit, old people. Plus, everything leading up to this has been quite smooth, very smooth and very understated with the camera and the action, and you don't expect a scene to be like this sudden and just so quick and with so much movement, if you know what I mean,
There's just like all these like little nuances that I quite like, where she decides, like, she's been told she's lost the baby and stuff. She doesn't believe that. And I like how... No, what was it? It's where she hears a baby cry, and they're, like, pretending she's nuts. You can just see it in her face. She's like, no, what the hell are you doing? But she's going along with it, because she's like, there's no use resisting. But when they try to give her medication, they've been giving her medication, how she pretends to slip it and then puts it under the tile. And then I like later where you see there's a build-up of these pills under the tiles. I thought that was pretty cool. But, just kind of good, like, visual storytelling, and not just overly dramatic, but, the camera's just paying attention to the right things.
Have you got a favourite shot or scene, then?
It sounds weird. It's the main impetus of the film, the main starting point or whatever, where the shit starts to get real. But where she gets raped, basically, the demon rape. That whole scene is balls to the wall insane. It's such a long scene, and it's just so it's so nuts. It's a pretty nuts scene.
That's mine as well. I remember watching this again when I was way too young and just like completely freaked me out. I was like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, it's pretty damn freaky. It goes so mad. It's like her with her boyfriend and then on a boat, and then you're like, what the hell? Then in a dark room, and then they're all naked, then they're all clothed, then they're binding her, and there's a pope, and then there's a devil, and you're not even getting much of the devil, just like his hands and his eyes.
Yeah, glimpses.
And all of this is so intercut together. It keeps going from one. You're like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, that was pretty cool. And
even the moments after, when she wakes up, Guy is being really fucking weird because he's just said, "Oh yeah, I just carried on. You passed out, but I was just going for it, enjoying myself." I'm like, in a necro way. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I shagged you while you were asleep. It's like, what? That should be huge red flags on her point.
Rosemary, are you hearing this right?
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't raped by the devil. Your boyfriend just said he raped you. It's like, yeah, I would have left.
I just don't think she heard him properly. I don't know. It just, she's still waking up, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But also, they drugged her with so much crap. So, maybe she's just not thinking clearly.
Well, she didn't eat it all, did she? She didn't eat all the mousse.
Yeah, she ate half of it. It seemed to be enough to, make her, I feel so tired and stuff. And, it was affecting her. I also think, when she's not taking the crap that they want to give her, she I don't know, she starts making sense, where they kind of kept forcing her to drink that stuff every day, and when she went out shopping and it started to really affect her, she's like, I am not feeling right, and she doesn't even tell them. She's like, I'm not drinking this crap.
So what score are you going to give directing though?
I even like the end where she kind of discovers their secret, cabal, the other end of the wardrobe.
Coven.
So my gut is telling me 7.9.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if I want to go higher, so I don't know. I'm like, I'll give it an 8.1.
I think Roman Polanski does a really great job here, and I think he just shows such confidence in his directing of just being very still at times, and just giving you little glimpses of mystery throughout the film, and it's such a slow burn and so understated on purpose. And just giving you these few moments of terror and scariness in this film, I think shows real confidence. And I think certainly with these older horror films, they paid so much attention to just the build-up of the scares, with things like The Omen and certainly Carrie, as I mentioned, I really enjoy that. You kind of just have this uneasiness throughout this film because it just feels like such a normal situation. This is just a normal American couple moving into an apartment. Because of it's so normal, that's kind of why it's kind of so creepy and terrifying that something like this can happen to a couple like this. And I feel like this film is basically completely building up to one moment and one reaction to the fact that Rosemary sees her baby for the first time, and you see this incredible reaction from Mia Farrow. And I feel like the film is basically building up to that one single shot. And I think that you have to admire that for me, which I find incredible. I mean, there is creepiness, and I think this film probably is more creepy for women than men. I mean, if you're pregnant, don't watch this film. Absolutely not. That's a big no-no. So, I'll go 8.9, I think. So, screenplay then. I find the little scene where Rosemary meets Terry in the basement doing their laundry very interesting, because Terry shows Rosemary her good luck charm, but smells really weird to Rosemary. And then she explains that Mr. Castevet gave her the charm, and says that, they took Terry in from the streets, and then says, at first I thought they wanted me for some kind of a sex thing, but they turned out to be really great grandparents. And then when you kind of rewatch it, you're like, did they try and bring back the devil with her in the past? Or were they, trying to get her pregnant before Rosemary turns up. Does the charm with the smell keep her under some kind of spell or drugged up? Then moments later, Terry seemingly has committed suicide by jumping out the window.
Yeah.
And then the Woodhouses find the body in the street, and you're like, did she say too much to Rosemary? What's going on here? I just find that's quite a really, really interesting scene that makes you ask so many questions.
Also, I think it's kind of funny as well in the scene where, so, you know, apparently they've taken this woman in and, she's committed suicide. But I don't know, and I think it's a good thing. Like, their reaction doesn't seem believable for having seen somebody just die there.
Yeah.
Oh, but she was so happy. I can't believe it. You've got to show me. But I think that's fine because you know these people are... Because at least Rosemary is acting like, wow, this is horrible. Like, she can barely...
A terrible thing, yeah.
You know... Yeah, she can barely talk. She's like, oh my God, this is terrible. But the Cassavetes are like, oh, this is like an inconvenience, you know. It just doesn't seem quite right. Like they seem a bit too proper about it.
Yeah.
But I also like how they don't know much about her. So that whole stuff that from her perspective, they're like grandparents, and they're like, well, does she have any family? I don't think so. And Rosemary's like, she has a brother. It's like, what? She's like, how the hell do you not know that? Like, she just randomly said this to a stranger, you know. Rosemary, how did you... Yeah, that makes me think they don't give a shit about her at all, you know. They're just kind of pretending, and they don't give a shit about Rosemary at all. It's all fake, sort of.
They just wanted to put a baby devil in her.
Yeah, that should have been red flags from her, just like, what? You know?
What's really interesting about this script is the fact that Rosemary keeps on getting this information about the Cassavetes and the witches, that something's really wrong here. You know, the fact that, you know, the Cassavetes are looking after her in these very strange ways with the drink and this doctor, you know, not taking modern medical advice, and yet she gets reassurance from her husband Guy that, you know, this is fine. These are really good people, and she's just stuck in between a rock and a hard place of just like, what do I trust? And then she respects her husband so much, she trusts him, so she has to like trust what he says, but alarm bells are still going off about these witches. It's just a great psychological dynamic that she has to deal with in this film, which I really enjoy. And when Rosemary's pregnant, the Cassavetes and Guy, keep her under control, and their friend Hutch visits her, and he examines her luck charm, and she says it's, you know, tanner root, but Hutch thinks it looks like some sort of fungus or mold, and then later calls her on the phone to meet her in the morning, presumably to warn her about the charm and that it's not normal to be losing weight, etc. And when she gets off the phone, she tells Guy who it was and that they are going to meet in the next morning. And then, interestingly, Guy goes out to get them ice cream in the evening, you know, which is odd anyway. And Rosemary doesn't really think anything of it. And then when Rosemary goes to meet Hutch, he doesn't turn up. And then she phones his apartment and they say he's gone into a coma. And you're like, yep, Guy got Hutch a very special ice cream last night. You know, and as I said, this film is not afraid to do meaningful things or kill people off screen. You know, in any other film, you would maybe have shown that stuff, but, you know, the script is so confident that they don't need to show it, which I quite liked.
But also, it's like, it's trying not to, you know, the way I see it is most films have like this sort of omniscient view, you know, so not following one character, it has this omniscience of, oh, this guy's getting killed over here, this guy. This is all from Rosemary's perspective, like the whole thing 100% from beginning to end. So you only know what she's going to know, and you only see what she could possibly see. You know, when it comes to like the murders and stuff, it's almost like you're on a detective mission with her rather than a straight up, you know, murder, you know, like a horror thing, like a horrific film. It's like, this person's, you know, knocked out, this person's blind, this person's, it's like, what the fuck is going on? You have very limited information from her point of view, and she's trying to piece this together.
Yeah, you're right. You're kind of like, you're the detective with Rosemary, and you just don't know who to trust. And then when Rosemary is given a book from Hutch just before he passes away called All of Them Witches, and finds out that Roman Cassavetes is an anagram of Stephen Marcato, the son of a witch from the book. At this point, she is fully convinced he is a witch, but still, Guy says it's just a coincidence. He laughs it off and ends up throwing away the book. And it's like as I said, Rosemary is stuck between being convinced that these people are witches, but respecting Guy's opinion because he trusts him because he's her husband. Just one of many examples of Rosemary being in such a difficult situation of being terrified that something bad is going to happen to her baby because of these people, and yet wanting to be reassured by her husband, Guy, even though he is in on it. It's interesting with Guy's character because at the end he was like, Ro, they're going to give us so much, but I don't feel like he's with them. It's like he's just struck a deal with the Satan worshippers, these witches, we'll give you, I don't know, it's not really mentioned. I guess it's just up to the audience to...
Yeah, I think it's kind of heavily implied. I'm not sure if it's flat out mentioned, but the fact that his acting career is taking off.
Yeah.
He's obviously made a deal to be a great actor. I think he is a shit actor, The older woman, Roman's wife, is like, I think I recognize him. And he's like, he's an actor. Oh, yeah. And he's like, well, he's only done adverts for, food products or whatever. He doesn't.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then it's like, as soon as the deal happens, it's like he's pretending to have a hobbled leg because he's got some bloody stage performance and he's going to be a big star. So I think he's done it to be a big named actor. Do you know what I mean?
And that kind of makes it worse.
Yeah, that explains to me like how, one, he's so happy about it, but two, he's really focusing on his career. Like, she's even like, you're barely looking at me, you're constantly going out. Because his career is taking off, and I think he's like, he may not even believe in Satan, but it's like, whatever deal I've done for the hell with the baby, I'm going to be a great actor. Yeah. So he's very self-centered.
Yeah, he just doesn't give a shit about Rosemary in the end. He really doesn't. He says he does, but really he just doesn't. It's just all self-centered and selfishness about his own career, yeah. And then, like, right after Rosemary has given birth, Guy is still, like, waving off the idea that witches are involved, and Guy says, let's face it, darling, you had the pre-partum crazies, basically mental health issues, and blames it all on that. But when you think about it, he could be right. Guy completely uses this to his advantage right to the end, that you can't rule out that Rosemary has had mental health issues. The ball is completely in his court, kind of thing. If people say anything, it's just like, she's got, if this was set in the modern day, like, she's got mental health problems, whatever. Guy completely uses this to his advantage right to the end, and you can't really rule out Rosemary having mental health issues during the pregnancy. That she's been seeing and imagining things. That's why this film is so good, because this could really happen to someone, that it could all just be a hallucination or a dream for her. That's why it's kind of so terrifying, because obviously we're both blokes, we don't really understand. But
speak for yourself. I've had 3 children that all were the spawn of Satan. I'm pregnant right now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's such a traumatic and hormonal experience when you're pregnant, I would imagine. So it is kind of a little plausible that
yeah, true.
Across the street, these guys are Satan worshippers. They want my baby, and it's just like, sorry, that she's got mental health problems. She's going through a tough time with her pregnancy. That's what makes this film like really scary, because it's so plausible. It really could be. This could happen,
Yeah.
Well, you got favourite line?
Here's a strange one. There are loads of really good lines. The line that stuck in my head because of how, like, funny it was just a funny line. But I'll think of a more serious one. But the funniest line in this is where you've just met them not long, and they're packing their stuff into the apartment, and they sleep the night. And I just like how they're having a meal, and then she just turns to him and says, "Can we make love?" Like, what a woman. What a woman. It's just kind of the most out of the blue, like, I have never seen a love scene just start with that.
Mine is Hail Satan. Hail Adrian. That was quite fun at the end. Yeah. His power is stronger than stronger. His might shall last longer and longer.
Yeah.
From Roman Castavets. So, score, Bowers, what are you going for screenplay?
I'll go like an 8.3.
Yeah, I think this script is really quite brilliant. It's so clever. Again, it's one of those type of films where it's very different the second time you watch it. And I love just this commitment to the fact that you're just building up to this one moment right at the end. So, and I just really admire that confidence. So I'll go like 9.2, I think. All right, acting then. Like, acting, again, I think is really great in this film. I love Ruth Gordon's performance as Minnie Castavets, who actually won an Oscar for this film in 68, 69 or something like that. When she gives Rosemary like a vitamin drink, she has this really creepy grin on her face while Rosemary drinks it. And it's quite funny, but creepy at the same time. You know, just her whole performance is just really like creepy and just has this essence of humor, you know. It's brilliant from her. You just wouldn't want her to live next door to you at all. Again, like, I keep on mentioning that the film builds up to this moment, and the moment is when Rosemary sees her baby for the first time. I've never seen a reaction like that before from an actor. Her eyes are so wide with shock, it's unbelievable. Her eyes almost literally pop out of her sockets. It's just incredible. You know, and the film basically just builds to this very moment, and it is truly terrifying, that look on her face. And I do love the fact that you don't really get to see the baby either. I thought that was quite clever. It's just all in your imagination what this baby looks like. I think you do get like a little flash of like the eyes, but even then you're not kind of like totally sure whether it was actually that. But yeah, I love that moment. And then what's even more terrifying in those last moments is when everything kind of calms down a little bit after she sees the baby, and Roman says to Rosemary, "Why don't you help us out, Rosemary? Be a real mother to Adrian. You don't have to join if you don't want to. Just be a mother to your baby." And when Rosemary notices that Laura Louise is rocking her baby too hard, she can't help but interrupt her and says, you're rocking him too fast. And then Roman like intervenes, but then Rosemary says, "You're trying to get me to be his mother." And Roman just simply says, "Aren't you his mother?" And then Rosemary rocks her baby, and she can't help but have the tiniest of smiles on her face, and she can't fight her maternal, motherly instincts anymore. You know, it's really subtle acting from Mia Farrow. Really great acting. She's smiling, but at the same time, she's absolutely terrified. It's just such a brilliant moment. But there is like one funny moment during that whole sequence is when Laura Louise is rocking the devil baby Adrian, and Roman, you know, Rosemary says she's rocking the baby too hard, and Roman tells her to sit down and let Rosemary rock him, and Laura Louise just pokes her tongue out at Rosemary, which I found quite funny. And she's just like, "Oh, I wanted to rock the devil baby."
Yeah. I thought she was a funny character, especially when like Rosemary's like, "Oh my god," and she's like, "Oh, shut up about your stupid god," you know.
It's ours now.
Yeah.
Favorite performance?
Mia Farrow.
Yeah, same. Mia Farrow is quite extraordinary, I think. Score, Boaz?
Maybe actually I'll go a 9, I'll go a 9.
Yeah? Yeah, I was kind of thinking same thing, actually. You know, Mia Farrow is amazing. And even John Cassavetes, who plays Guy, he just has this arrogance about him, but just this weird, like, calming reassurance for Mia Farrow's character as well, Rosemary. And obviously, again, that look, my God, I've never seen anything like that on an actress. It is quite terrifying. So I'll go, like, again, 9.2, I think. Right, let's add up the scores then for Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby gets 52.7, which is a pretty good score. Rosemary's Baby wins this one pretty comfortably by like 12 points, as 1408 gets 40.3. So a bit of an ass whooping. The devil wins this one. Next week, the Marvel movies keep coming after they've been delayed, and the next one is Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. So we'll be having a look at MCU origin films. So that'll be an interesting pick there. Right. That's it then. Thank you, Boaz. Hail Satan. Bye.
Hail Satan. Hail Santa.
Satan. Bye-bye.
He gives you presents.
Satan gives you babies.
That's true.
To eat.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Eating one now.
That's it for this week's pod. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to find out more about the podcast or suggest future topics for us to discuss related to upcoming releases, let us know on Instagram at Film vs. Film Podcast and on Twitter at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.